Hey
Hey,
mamas,
mamas.
welcome back to another episode. I'm Jess,
I'm Erica.
and today we got a special guest, guys. Her name is Eve. How's your day been? Welcome to Mama's Code.
Hi, girls. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. My day's been good. My day's been good. Yeah, I've been looking forward to talking tonight. So thanks for having me on.
She's going to be telling us her story about postpartum psychosis and her journey.
Mama's Code.
Eve is basically a national treasure, am I right?
My friend once put it on a photo of me where I looked really drunk. So that's where that came
Listen, you have done so much for all the women out there and everyone, and it's just amazing to be able to have you on. How was your journey? How was it becoming a parent? How many kids do you have?
Yeah, so I've got one child, one son called Joe. Joe was I think he was my fifth pregnancy. So I've got this condition where I've got two wombs called uterus adelphus. It's really rare, but I've got something else attached to it that I talk about, and kind of people go when I say it. But I think it's important because I think sometimes when we have physical illnesses, sometimes maybe the impact on that can occur mentally later. So I've got something called uterus adelphus, and I kind of use my face to describe this. So I've got two wombs. So imagine my eyes and my wombs. I've got one vulva, but I've got two vaginal entrances. So imagine my nose is like my vulva, and I've got two vaginal entrances that go each to their own womb.
Oh my God.
You know, I'm so glad you mentioned this because I searched you up today and I came across your vlog and I read about it and I was like, oh my God, Jess, should we ask about this? Because I thought you start thinking about these things and then you kind of think, do you think maybe it could be an in hormone balance between like that cause, the postpartum psychosis? Like there's so many questions that just comes within just your condition there. So I love that you mentioned that. Thank you.
Well, do you know, it's important though, because I think as women, I've definitely learned this as I'm getting older and I'm approaching menopause and stuff now. There's a whole load of things I suddenly realised I wish I knew about what it's like to get older, especially after being a parent as well, and what happens to your body. But I think, I'd never heard of uterus adelphus, and indeed loads of the healthcare professionals when it was discovered. I was 23 when it was discovered, and I'd had loads of problems with my periods. I started my periods when I was 8. And I'd had terrible periods when I was at school, and I'd had what I always thought was 2 periods a month. And of course, everyone was saying to me, you can't have 2 periods a month. And of course, I actually do have 2 periods a month. Sometimes they come together, sometimes they come separately. But it's discovered when I was 23, and I think I realised then that, and I kind of was working out then in my own brain, that's why I'd always had like problems with my periods at school. And then it was only when I then fell pregnant with Joe, and Joe's the only pregnancy that I've been able to carry through to birth. Because it's really hard for me to maintain a pregnancy, because when you have uterus adelphus, your wombs are very small. One of mine's smaller than the other one. I can't remember which one it is, and I've been pregnant in both wombs. And of course, when you're pregnant, you can't have sex in case you fall pregnant in the other womb, and then you have pregnancies with different gestations. So while I was pregnant with him and I hadn't miscarried by the certain points that I'd miscarried before, I was then kind of prepped a bit for stillbirth. Just that they didn't know if he was going to come, and if he did come, that he might not be a live child. I was also on progesterone therapy to strengthen my womb throughout pregnancy. So I was putting they're like mini candles. You put them up yourself, and you lie upside down so they go into yourself to strengthen your womb, and they did their job. But there's a school of thought that once I had Joe, and he came at 39 weeks, I can't remember what it was, and I had him by cesarean because I can't give birth vaginally, and it was a beautiful cesarean. There's a school of thought that maybe because on so much progesterone that triggered the psychosis. There's a lot of educational work going on around psychosis, and I feel really blessed that I'm involved with the charity Action on Postpartum Psychosis. There's a really good professor called Ian Jones, who's kind of the world expert on this, but no one really knows what triggers it. If you've got bipolar, I don't experience bipolar, but they say if you've got bipolar, it can kind of you're at more of kind of a risk of developing it, but no one's quite sure why it happens. But there is definitely a part of me that kind of thinks I've got all these hormones going on. These hormones have now kind of brought perimenopause to me, happily at 41, which is another jolly hit we'll talk about another day. But there is something in it that thinks I've got all these hormones in my body. I definitely knew what happened to me after I had Joe was like nothing I'd ever experienced. And indeed, the 11 years after now, the kind of how my brain has recovered from it, and looking back now and thinking, God, what did I go through? And I think one of the reasons, and I'll talk a bit about what I went through in a minute, so we can talk about symptoms and so people can be aware. But I think this whole, the national treasure thing is a joke, because I don't know what it was for me. I've got a lot of friends now in the maternal mental health world. Some very privately don't ever want to talk about what happened to them again. And I totally respect that, because it's hugely traumatic. And as you said, Jess, there's so many different stats on this. Some people say 4 out of 10 women suffer PND, maternal mental illness. Some people say it's 7 out of 10. Some people say it's 1 in every 500 births women get postpartum psychosis. Some say it's 1 in 1,000. So these things aren't as rare as we think they are, but we're still only just starting to talk about them now. Like, I know we'll touch on intrusive thoughts later, but God, I'm talking to a lot of men about intrusive thoughts at the moment, and sexually intrusive thoughts, and it's still, people are like, oh God, you can't talk about that, it's really awful. Actually, women are experiencing all these things, so there's still a whole load of us stuff to do, like cupboards to open, doors to open, things to talk about. I don't know what it was, and I was a really shy girl prior, Jo. I never spoke up. I hated presentations at work. I hated speaking out. I'd never have done something like this. But there was something in me that kind of thought, and there was no Instagram or anything 11 years ago when I was doing all of this, so it's not for like fame or that kind of thing. I just thought, I've got some kind of responsibility to tell women what can happen to them, because I had no idea that this could happen to me. And all I did in the months when I was trying to recover and I was in a psychiatric unit, I honestly just spent, oh my God, months Googling things like, I was scared of my baby. Has anyone else been scared of their baby? I was desperate to find someone who'd ever experienced what I'd experienced, because I couldn't find it anywhere because so little was spoken about. So I think the reason I started talking about it, and of course it's gained so much traction over the past few years, is that I wanted to, one, like find my people, find if there was anyone else who was similar to me. One, so I could hope that I could get better, but two, then to say to people, you do get better. You do get better. You might, I suffer anxiety, which I in a different way to what I did before Jo, but I also handle it in a very different way and in a better way, to show people you can get through it and you recover in different ways. And then of course, what that comes out of that has come some wonderful things like the Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week, that I'm a co-founder of, and that kind of stuff. So, and I'm really proud that it's women like us, like that thing of all mums are real mums, like real mums who are putting themselves out there, doing podcasts, doing media, like writing blogs. It's women like us that are now affecting policy decisions, that are getting things out there, that are getting hashtags trending. The Awareness Week is founded by women like me, like a group of 11 women like me. We're the ones who are leading the stories, as that should be. We should be talking about what's happened to us, and then telling other people it can happen to them, but you can get better. I find it really difficult to listen to kind of like male psychiatrists and stuff saying to me, yes, you will get better, you will feel like this. And I thought, I want to talk to someone who understands me, who's gone through what I've gone through, and then I'll believe it more. And so I think that's kind of how it's all come together over the last 11 years. And I thought I'd have shut up about it by now. I thought, I'm like, oh, shut up, Eve, it's time to carry on, it's like,
no, please don't shut up. do you know what, for everyone listening, you played such a major part in Stacey's role in EastEnders, about just getting it out there. Like, honestly, we were doing research and we've wanted to do an episode on psychosis for such a long time, but it's always so hard to find the right candidate for it, and to know how much they've spoken about it, how much they went through, and how much they're willing to share. So you've done so much, and like you said, it's you question yourself, why did you even start talking about it? But if you don't talk about it, then how is every other woman behind you going to find a way out? I mean, you're potentially saving so many lives every single day.
You've basically passed the tunnel for everyone to feel comfortable to talk about this, to know, okay, I'm not going to feel alienated in my own body because this person over here felt exactly the same, so I'm not on the same. When you just feel like, no, I can't say this because if I say this, people are actually going to think I'm crazy. But then you hear someone else saying it and you feel, okay, yeah, I can now relate to someone. It's lovely to have someone else, but if you're constantly told that, no, that's wrong, you're wrong for feeling these things, just the same thing, that instant connection that you have with your baby. I feel like we say a lot in the podcast, not everyone feels that instant connection with your baby, because we can't put false information out there. Not everyone, the baby's out and you're like, oh my God, I love it so much. Not all of us have that, Some of us are just like, oh my gosh, like I've just gone through like something so traumatic, I don't want to hold the baby. And that's fine. It's fine. It doesn't determine how much you're going to love your baby in the future.
Well, I think you're completely right. I think I paid all this money for all these bloody antenatal groups. I was like, everyone says you've got to do this. We did all these things. You know, I never learned anything about like how I'd feel. Actually, saying that, I genuinely do remember one line where the woman said, some people experience what's called postnatal depression. So maybe one of you in the room will go through it. But, you know, and it literally was a line. I think about it now. And actually, I do a lot of work with that antenatal provider now, who's vastly improved, you know, over the past couple of years, and has taken on really brilliant feedback and actually reacted really well to it. But I think, so I never knew. When I gave birth to Joe, I was so excited the hour before I had him. But the hour after I had him, you know, my mum walked in. So what, he was half an hour old or something, and I was in the postnatal ward, and my mum came in, and the first thing she said, my mum's really straightforward, like talking like Irish Catholic woman. She's 4'9", she's like a little, you know, demon. But she walked in, and the first thing she said, I thought she'd be like, grandbaby, you know, I thought she'd be coming, like knocking everyone out of the way. But she actually said, and I saw her a few weeks ago, and she still talks about this now. She says, even I won't forget when I walked in, and she said to me, it was something like, you look like a zombie, you look glazed over. And I can remember I was kind of not really paying attention to her. I remember this was the hour before. I was walking around, like prepping myself, like I was completely normal. I was completely Eve. I knew I was glazed over. I knew something wasn't right with me. And actually, I really wasn't bothered about the fact that my baby was in a cot next to me. I really was not that bothered by him. You know, John was kind of like all over him, and I was like, I was trying to find a charger for my phone. It was all, I don't know what I was doing. And I was in the Royal London Hospital in Whitechapel before this part was knocked down, and there was old bars on the windows from when it was like an old Victorian hospital. And I remember having a real flash of, oh, if I really wanted to get out of here now, I feel quite trapped in here, but I could probably climb through those bars on the window. And it was like a real flash of an image. And I think over the next 3 days that I stayed in, God, it was just awful. I just remember feeling, I kept saying to the women in the unit, like, are you really hot? You know, I know maternity units are hot, but I was like, I'm like dripping in sweat, and people going, it's not that hot. And I was like, I feel really, really hot. And like John kind of found me crawling around the floor one night, and I said I was looking for a nap here, but I don't really know what I was doing. And it was on day 3 when I left the hospital with my sister to drive me home. We got into the car, and I developed tunnel vision. It was honestly like this kind of black, everything went black, and I could see everything kind of at the end of me here. And I said to John, why is the car rocking? And he said, well, it's not rocking. And I thought we were surrounded by like hundreds of people in the car. And of course, now I know that we weren't. I was having probably what I think is my first hallucination. And I came back to the house, and, you know, my parents were there, and it's lovely. And then John went to get some milk, and I phoned my brother, and he said to me, Eve, you sound like you're drunk. I think I was rambling. You know, I was quite manic. And I think then it was the couple of days later that I said to John, I said, oh, I can see myself from the corner of the room. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, oh, I'm looking down on myself from the corner up there in the living room. And I thought the duvet cover was dancing. We had this old pink duvet cover, which was just plain pink, but I thought I could see it all kind of moving around. But the main thing for me was that I was utterly, utterly terrified. Am I allowed to swear? I was about to swear. I was actually fucking
Go for it.
of my baby.
No,
I
go
was
for it.
so terrified of him. And the whole idea of it was that I realised he was here forever. And I talk about this quite a lot because this was my overwhelming feeling, which then produced all these, you know, bonkers hallucinations and feelings that I was getting. I realised he was here forever. And actually saying that phrase 11 years ago would have sent me into some kind of horrific panic attack. I felt like he was here forever, and it was a responsibility that just seemed too overwhelming for me. And I kept saying to John, it's not like this flat, if we decide we don't like it anymore, we can sell it. And I remember saying, like, and I still haven't, all these years on, you know, 16 years together, I haven't dumped John, but I thought, if I don't like you anymore, I can get rid of you. I can't get rid of the baby. You know, what do I do? And if I do get rid of the baby, we'll get it for adoption, everyone's going to hate me. You know, so I just felt like I was trapped in this horrendous circle of doom with this baby I didn't know if I wanted. And the whole trap thing came through. I started to feel like I was trapped in my own body. I felt like I had cling film over my mouth. I used to claw at my mouth. I thought I was trapped in the world. You know, I said to John, I want to climb up to the clouds and kind of cut in half. A bit like the Truman Show, I want to cut through the sky with a pair of scissors. That was my overwhelming feeling in Psychosis.
How was your pregnancy? Were you excited when you found out you're pregnant? Were you excited when it was your due date and you're waiting for your baby? Or so it
Yeah,
was. It was
really
genuinely just
excited.
a switch. As soon as the baby came out, your
It was
body
a
just.
switch. Like, and I switched between 1 hour to the other. I was really excited when I was pregnant. I was anxious because we'd had so many like losses and stuff before, but we had a brilliant obstetrician who kind of was like, we stumbled across him at the NHS hospital. He was like a world leader in uterus adelphus when I'd had one of my other miscarriages. And so he saw me every week all the way through, and he delivered Joe. So I was in the best care possible, and he was wonderful. And he was so sad when he learned at my 12-week check that I'd been in psychiatric care and stuff. He was like, I'm so sorry that this has happened. But no, and I was anxious, and even though we were prepped that we might end up having him, I didn't feel overwhelmingly anxious about that. It sounds really awful, but I thought, we'd been through losses so many times that you never get used to them, but you start to understand how to deal with it. And so I thought this it could be another thing.
It takes the joy away from a pregnancy, right?
Yeah.
We were actually talking about it over the weekend because of a friend, and we just thought it's such a shame that it's such a beautiful part, but then it's just haunted by your past, even though it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen again, but it just takes away the joy of everything, and you're always on edge, you're always anxious, and even when your baby arrives, you're always like, oh my god, is this real? Like, is he gonna sleep okay? Is he like, I think you're just
through the pregnancy, like I couldn't, because he was smaller because he was in one of my little wombs. He had reduced movements quite a lot, and of course whenever there was reduced movement, I was absolutely batshit scared. We were we were at the hospital. We were in triage so many times of me being monitored, and I was terrified I was going to lose him again at those points. But of course then when I had him, this switch went, and I almost forgot all of that, and it was as if something took over me, something that I didn't want taking over me, but this feeling just took over and like ravaged me. It literally ravaged me to bits. And I ended up in psychiatric care. I ended up in a psychiatric mother and baby unit. It took a long time to get in one.
I was gonna say how after you've been home, you said that on the third day you were just not there. How long did it actually take you to stay, or for your partner to realize, okay, she needs help like right now?
So the midwife came round on day 4, so the day after we came home from the hospital, and John said, John was brilliant throughout it all, because I was just rocking back and forth, and John said, no, I'm a bit worried about Eve. I was looking up at postnatal depression. She doesn't seem to want to be near the baby. Like, the only time she'll feed the baby is if I hold the baby towards her. She doesn't want to be on her own with the baby. She said she's scared of him. And the midwife, I've got it all written down in my notes. I used to scrabble all these lists down. The midwife said, we don't normally diagnose postnatal depression to like 12 weeks or something. She said it was something ridiculous and incorrect. And she said, I can see you're really sleep deprived. She was like, you could put baby on a bottle and mummy will get more sleep. All that awful thing of calling you mummy instead of your name, and mummy will get more sleep. And she was really dismissive, really, really dismissive. But the day later, day 5, John booked me an appointment with the doctor. And went to see this doctor. And she said to me, John had kind of explained how I was feeling, and I was nodding along. And I said, like, I'm too scared to say it out loud. I'll tell John. I wasn't scared of saying how I felt. I didn't have any shame, but I just was like scared of speaking. It was just, I was terrified of everything. I was even scared of doing a wee. Everything traumatized me and frightened me. And the doctor kind of said to me, and this is when I talk to doctors now and help in their training, I say, you've got to be so careful how you deliver messages to women. The doctor said to me one specific thing. She said, and she was very kind, but she said, do you want to flush the baby down the toilet? And I think she thought she was kind of maybe being a bit kind of jovial, break the ice. But in my mind, I thought, well, no, I don't want to do that. But it kind of just thought, well, I don't want to do that. So I kind of thought, well, what the hell's wrong with me? If that's the one symptom she's talking about, I kind of just clung to that and thought, no, I don't want to do that. And because I went, no, she just went, well, I'm not that worried about you then. So she just took my response to that one question. And of course, that is not how we should be approaching women when we're talking about this. And John said, I'm not really, I'm not happy with this. And she said, I've got someone else waiting here. Of course, he took me back. I think that was the Friday. He took me back on the Monday, the Wednesday. We had a health visitor out on the Thursday. Oh God, this one. And we went to A&E, I think the week later. They honestly kept saying to me, the main thing that people kept saying to me was, you're very sleep deprived, stop breastfeeding. And John was like, before Eve had Joe, she didn't really care about breastfeeding. I didn't know how I was going to feed my baby. I didn't pay any attention to it really. But I realised, and what I now know is that I was probably trying to keep some kind of bond with him. I would feed him. John had to hold him on me. I wouldn't touch him or look at him, but I would have him on my boob. And John said, there's something in me that thinks it's important for Eve to keep kind of feeding him. I feel like if we stop this, there's something's going to go. But no one paid any attention to anything. Got to about 5 weeks, and he called another health visitor around, and she said to me, look, I'm really quite worried about you, but I'm completely out of my depth. I've never seen anything like this before. And John was like, we've been to A&E 3 times, we've been to doctors. Doctors were even saying to John, are you okay? They thought he was really overreacting. But when I look back now at photos, John said to me, Eve, it was bonkers. I know people don't like to use these words anecdotally, but when I talk my own experience, I'm fine to use them about myself. I was nuts compared to how I normally was, and John could see it. But I do think now, and I see some of the healthcare professionals now who saw me back then, some of them have said to me, I'd never seen it before, even my surgery. I really didn't know. Said, I'd hoped you'd go away and call the health visitor around and stuff. And I said, well, we would just pass from pillar to post. In the end, John went on Google, said help for mums who feel like this, and he found the number for the Association of Postnatal Illness, who are a charity, and he phoned them. And they said, you really need to get your partner some help. We obviously can't diagnose it. We can signpost for support. And he said, I've read about these mother and baby units. How do I get Eve into one? And he spoke to health visitor who said, oh, yes, there's a few of them in the country, but I don't know where they are, blah, blah, blah. And we found out there was one in Nottingham, near where John's parents live. So we drove to Nottingham. And I kind of had some huge meltdown the night that we got there, where I kind of woke up in the middle of the night and I thought Joe was flying around the room. Oh God, it was all really awful. I went to the hospital in the middle of the night, and it was all really. The next day I woke up, and that's when I said I wanted to kill myself, and locked myself in the bathroom. John kind of banged his way in and took me to hospital and just dumped me in psychiatric outpatients and said, we're not leaving until someone sees her. And they were like, go to casualty. And John was like, no, I'm not going anywhere else. I've been everywhere. Psychiatrists are here. Someone's going to see her. And within the next hour, I was admitted. But it was a complete nightmare. And that's actually it. That's what, when I first started campaigning, it was about the fact that I had to move 200 miles to get into a bloody mother and baby unit. When actually we realise now there's one in Wembley, quite near where I live. And there was one there when Joe was born that no one knew about. And then I forget how long I was in a unit, because I was in there, then I had home leave, and then I was back out, and then I was a community psychiatric nurse at home for 3 months every day. And I think when Joe was around 4.5 months or something along those lines, in the June or whatever it was, we came back to London, and that was really frightening for me, because I thought I'm completely on my own now. But there was something in me that knew that I had to do it, and that John was going to go back to work, and would I be okay? But something kind of in me knew it was going to be a lot of hard work, but that I'd be.
Do you get admitted in with the baby?
Yeah, so mother and baby units, there's 17 of them across the UK. When I was ill, there were about 14, 15, and they have about 6 beds in. They cost a lot of money, for women to be in them for the NHS each week, because it's personalised care 24 hours a day. And women are admitted to them if they have severe perinatal mental illness. So you can be admitted from, I think it's 32 or 34 weeks pregnant. I always forget. So, if you've got an antenatal issue that's severe, up until baby is 1, and you're admitted with your baby. And so when I went into the unit, they showed me into my room, and I thought, my baby sleeps in with me. My baby can't sleep in with me because I'm scared of my baby. I can't, at home, John's with me. And so for the first week, the nurse sat outside my room with the door open every day. And there was, at the end of the first week, I shut my door, I think, for a minute or something. I was on my own with Joe, and that was my first big, they celebrated me in the unit and stuff.
So they literally put you in there with your worst fear, basically.
Yeah, because in a really safe environment, with beautiful nurses, and
we were saying that today, that how is it that you're in this room, in this facility with the child that has made you like this, in theory, because of their birth, it's kind of giving you all these thoughts. And then
not just that, but my question was more so, what if you wanted to
hurt the baby
and then they put you in the room with the baby? How does that work out?
Yeah, so it's incredibly rare. It's incredibly, obviously in the work that I do, I have come across instances, where things have happened, but it's incredibly rare for women to ever hurt their baby. Incredibly rare, particularly with psychosis, where or indeed intrusive thoughts where you might visualize things. It doesn't mean you actually want to do it. And so when you go into mother and baby units, there are risk assessments done, and they have, you know, safeguarding officers and nursery nurses and things like that. And actually, when you went in, there were some babies did sleep in the nursery, you know, if it was deemed that they needed to be in. One, so mum could be medicated to a point where she feels safe for herself, and that kind of stuff. But I can't describe how safe the units are, you know. So on the, like, some units have different ways of doing things. Like, my friend Catherine was in one of her plastic sheets and stuff like that. Mine was really homely. There were 6 bedrooms, there was a TV room, a living room, a kitchen with loads of biscuits and lovely stuff in it, so you can make cakes and stuff, you know. And then you're encouraged to have baths, and people come in and do beauty treatments on the women and stuff like that, you know. And you do yoga and pottery and like baby bonding activities. But no, I mean, you're assigned your own one-to-one nurse. And there's nurses on duty 24 hours a day, and of course they do room checks, you know, more times than I can even say every hour. It's constantly someone's looking into the window to see if you're okay. But I would say these are the best in the game. You know, they know this is why mother and baby units are the best places to be, because women who can't get into a mother and baby unit and go to a psychiatric unit without their baby, they will often be like, how am I going to start? The baby's going to be with me forever, so how do I start my recovery without the baby? And there's loads of evidence where people say how actually detrimental it was to not be with their baby. For some, like I've got a friend who, for her, being without her baby was the right thing to focus on her recovery. But for me, even though I was batshit scared of Joe, I absolutely had to be with him, because if I hadn't, I would have rejected him forever. I needed to, basically, it was exposure therapy. You know, so it's like my friend Catherine, who does Taming Olivia. She's a maternal OCD advocate. She talks about how she would have to kind of go up and down escalators with the baby, you know, holding the baby to get over her fear of being on stairs with the baby, you know, over and over. But I had to be with Joe to get used to him being there. And it was, you know, the kind of, I went on brilliant medication, you know, God, antipsychotics and antidepressants. And then you learn lots of different techniques. You know, I went through EMDR therapy, CBT, exposure therapy, you know, how to kind of get used to things and trusting yourself. But I'd say the safety aspect, mother and baby are the best in the game, you know. And also you're very included in your care. So even though I wasn't sectioned because I went in voluntarily and I was asking to go in, but you have like daily meetings with all the care staff to talk about how you're feeling. John came in with me at the same time, and he talked about how he thought I was responding to it. And I don't think I've ever felt so safe. But if I'd said one night, like, I want a proper night's sleep, like I really am very, very frightened of Joe being in the room, they would have taken him to the nursery and I could have had a sleep and a rest like that, you know. And I've got lots of friends now who've been in mother and baby units whose baby slept in a nursery for a while, because they were maybe some of them were catatonic, you know, not speaking, not moving, in their state of psychosis, so they couldn't physically look after the baby. So the baby does have to be looked after by the staff. But the whole point of it is that you leave the unit rejuvenated on the road to recovery with your baby. They're amazing places, honestly. They're amazing places. They're just, I didn't quite realise it till I came out. Remember, my mum came to visit, and I think she thought it was going to be like, I don't know, what's that film with Jack Nicholson when he's in a psychiatric ward? I don't know, because my mum walked in and she was like, oh, isn't it? It's really nice, isn't it? You know, and I was like, the beds won't change the war, mum. No, it was really nice, you know. And they encouraged John to go out and get me some clothes, because obviously we turned up with nothing, you know. And they used to let John stay a little bit later than normal, and so they'd let him in at 9 o'clock, he'd leave at 10. You know, they let me order from the curry menu every day, and it was all everything that makes you feel nice, to feel kind of like you. They do. But yeah, they're brilliant places.
Mama, I love you.
Was you diagnosed with any mental health issues beforehand? So anxiety, anything?
Yeah, no. So no, I'll say no now, because a few years ago I would have answered no to this question. And it's only since doing a load of work in mental health in the past, you know, like 8 years or something, that I've realised that I probably did have a mental illness when I was a teenager. What I realise now is bulimia. You know, so I had an eating disorder when I was a teenager, but it was never described to me. So that was in the 80s. It was never described to me as being a mental health condition. And of course, now I'm a mental health first aider, you know, and I do lots of work on this. And obviously some women experience eating issues when they're pregnant. You know, there's some good work going on about eating disorders in pregnancy at the moment. You know, I realise now that actually it was a mental illness, but it wasn't kind of said to me at the time. So a few years ago, if you ever listened to anything I did a few years ago, you'd hear me say no. But I think the realisation is that I did. I always felt like an introvert. I think I've realised I'm actually an extrovert, but I just don't think I knew how to handle I don't think I knew how to handle natural anxiety, nerves and panic when I was younger. Something good has come out of this experience for me, and that I've kind of learned that it's okay to be like me, to be myself, to talk like I want to talk. It's okay to be expressive and voice my opinions on things, because I've been through something and I've had to come out of it through my own hard work. And so I'm kind of okay with being a bit anxious now, or a bit this, that and the other. But I feel much more confident than I did before I had Joe. It's a strange one. I think because I've got to know myself a lot, through the process of recovery, you learn a lot about yourself.
Do you feel like you were robbed from the newborn days with Joe? Like, do you feel some type of way about it? Because, they always say, oh, the newborn is a beautiful stage, and oh my God, you're home happy with your child. But in reality, you get home and you're like, okay, where's the manual? What do we do?
I remember saying to John, because I'd read this somewhere, people go, it takes village to raise a baby. I was like, where the fuck is this village? Can someone send the village, please? Because Joe never slept, and I remember saying, my baby doesn't sleep, baby. And then people going, okay, but when I went into the unit, they were like, yeah, he's not a baby that sleeps, is it? And he has to take like sleep medication now. It's finally been realised at 11 that he just, he can survive on 3 hours sleep over a week or something nuts. On a personal basis, I don't feel robbed of it, and I'll tell you why. I think I've accepted and owned my experience for what it is, and I'll tell you why I think it is. I think I did a campaign this week for Postpartum Support International, talking about the realities of postpartum, and everyone's reality is different. But I think there is still this idea that having a baby is magical, it's beautiful, you fall in love at that moment, you forget all the pain of childbirth in the moment your baby's given to you, this, like that. Actually, that's not true for a lot of people at all. That's women are experiencing horrendous birth trauma at times. Them being handed their baby suddenly doesn't take away what has happened to them down here in their mind, and they've got birth trauma and PTSD for years later. So we are doing a disservice to women kind of saying those things. For some women, it is their reality, and I think we have to allow that reality and celebrate that. For some women, it's like that. Some women go back to the figure they had before, and I don't think we should be shaming women for doing that. I'm not really down with this whole real mums have to not be slim and kind of stuff. I think actually all mums are different, all women are different, so we don't shame anyone. But I think we are still very frightened of revealing what can be the reality. I think I don't feel robbed at all, because I feel like I've accepted what happened to me was not my fault. No one knows why it happened. The shameful thing was that I had to fight for care, but that I worked really hard with support to get better. And that I was open to accepting support. I was open to taking medication. I was open to taking therapy. Lots of people saying don't take meds. I mean, I had so many people saying don't take meds. For me, they were the absolutely right thing to do, and they made me again. I also feel like I've grown with Joe, so the child who I felt so frightened of, sleeps in my room still. He's like my shadow. He's such a bolshy, confident little boy, but he's also, and he can sit and talk to you about the abortion laws in Texas and this, that, and the other, and American voting systems. But he also loves being with mummy, and still calls me mummy and feels safe with mummy. And I often hear those things where people go, oh God, am I going to really balls my baby up if I've got postnatal depression? And sometimes in newspapers you see these awful things where it says things like brain scans on babies where mummies have had PND show their brain is reacting in a different way. And you think, well, actually that research could be presented in a far more responsible way. And I want to be like, here's Joe, the child that I thought I was totally terrified of. Look how he's grown with me, and look at our relationship. I don't feel robbed, because I feel like I've got him and I've grown with him. And actually, I do think back now, and I look at photos where I thought I was incredibly frightened, and I was, but I can see that I'm holding him. And even if I didn't have a certain feeling, I was holding him. He could smell me. I remember his really cute little feet. He had really cute feet, like really sweet feet. And just like, he was very, very cute. And I can look back at photos and see that now. And I can feel like I can live that now. So personally, I don't feel robbed, but I think that's because I've done a lot of work. And I feel desperately sad for women who do feel robbed from that, especially like women who experience birth trauma and things. So I feel like they're just not being given the help that they need to get. Like, they can't get over something to start enjoying motherhood. There's a lot of motherhood we don't talk about. No one talks about the fact you piss yourself. No one talks about the fact, that you bleed for bloody months on end. no, no one talks about after pains. No one told me that my C-section hand would be like this horrific and I'd still have 11 years on. There are certain things that just I really wish we would talk about more openly, and going a bit bananas after having a baby and having extreme feelings like I had isn't normal. It's not okay, but it happens and you can get better. I think that's kind of my message.
I think that's why me and Erica decided to do the podcast, because there's a lot of things that we've had a bit of everything in our experience as mothers, but when someone comes to you and says, oh my God, we're pregnant, it's like, oh my God, it's so magical for them at that point, and that phase is so beautiful because you don't actually know what's coming. But we also don't want to be the ones to be like, this is going to happen and this is going to happen, because it might not happen. They might have the best experience and just be okay. But obviously there has to be some sense of reality and fine line of this could happen, and if this does happen, it's going to be okay. You just need to find the right support and just be realistic, really. And I feel like a lot of people, like you say, you see on Instagram, everyone has this perfect motherhood and lifestyle, and that this would never happen to me. But then off Instagram, they're crying in the bed every single night because it's horrible. So I think when we started doing the podcast, we thought we need to talk about every single experience, because anyone can have anything. And during the podcast, we've met so many amazing people that we've known for ages, and when they're telling us their story, we're like, oh my God, me too. Or when you were talking about the thoughts that were going through your head, I've mentioned so many times that I used to go down the stairs and think my child's going to fall out my arms and his head is just going to smash and all his brains are going to, but I would never be able to say this because I'd think, oh my God, people are going to think I'm crazy, or like,
but you know how many women
trying to harm your child.
But no, but but it's that thing, and I talk about it when I talk to my mums about it in my peer support group. I say, like, if you ever had a thing where you stood in front of the tube and you think, oh God, I could jump now. I'm not going to, but you could. And you think that's an intrusive thought. And if you think, oh, I don't want that in my head, why am I thinking that? But that's kind of an easy one to go, because you kind of feel like it's in that split second it goes. Once you've got a child you're responsible for, those kind of thoughts then become really scary when your child becomes like the feature in that thought. So a lot of women will say exactly the kind of thing that you've just said. Yes, the whole kind of dropping the baby or throwing the baby, and brain exploding and all these kind of things, and and I think talking about it and using these words is important, so people can realize, don't actually put the emotion into them that you feel, because actually it's not a real thought. There are some women who experience thoughts of a sexual nature and they are absolutely horrified that they think that this means that they're appeared on. Of course, it's the complete opposite. An intrusive thought is a thought that you don't want. It's something that you don't want to do. It's your brain realizing it's the worst thing that could possibly happen, and it's basically your brain saying you don't want this to happen, which is why you're so terrified of the thought. It's very, very it's something that a lot of women go through, and so there are some really wonderful people like Catherine Benfield, the Windsor Flynn on Instagram in particular, who talk very openly about intrusive thoughts, and actually that they don't mean what you think they mean, but they can be incredibly distressing. There's a GP that I work with called Dr. Stephanie DiGiorgio, and she talks very openly. She's a perinatal lead for Royal College of GP. She talks very openly about intrusive thoughts she suffered after the birth of her children, very openly about the content of them, and how they terrified her, and she couldn't be near knives and all that kind of stuff. But actually, the whole point of intrusive thoughts is they're intrusive. They're thoughts you don't want, and they're things that you're not going to do. And there has been some really irresponsible news headlines over the years with things like women saying, I wanted to drown my baby. No, you didn't want to drown your baby. And that's not actually what the woman said. The woman said, I had thoughts in my brain that was thinking that I wanted to drown my baby, but I didn't want to drown my baby. So people will look at these kind of things and go, oh, that means something, but it doesn't. It means the opposite. And intrusive thoughts can be really helped. Medication can be really good at helping. Therapy can be brilliant. And it doesn't mean you're a monster in any way at all with intrusive thoughts, not at all. But more people go through it than we realise.
When you left the BMU, what was your aftercare?
It was really good. I had a community psychiatric nurse who used to come and see me every day, and she would give me tasks to do. So I would have to start off by walking 10 seconds down the road with Joe on my own, and then 15 seconds, then 20 seconds, and had to build up to going on a bus with him, and she would come and see me every day and see how I was doing. My aftercare when I came back to London was difficult, so the mother and baby unit had set me up to be an outpatient at my local psychiatric outpatients here. when I arrived back in London, they had no idea what to do with me, and said they hadn't dealt with anyone like me before. So Nottingham kept me on for a year, and so I would go up and visit them maybe once every couple of weeks, once a month, to see a psychiatrist, and have phone calls with them and have CBT. And I stayed on my hospital grade medication for about a year, just throughout my maternity leave. So I was really supported by the mother and baby unit, incredibly so. That's why I raved about them so much. I was really, really supported by them. And it was just difficult coming back to London and kind of not having any care here because no one knew what to do with me. So I was very lucky that the mother and baby unit said they'd keep me on. But yeah, that's kind of another kind of bugbear that I get, that women not having continuity of care. They've been so brave coming forward, asking for help, and help is there. But I get very upset when I feel like women haven't had a continuity of care, because it's so important. As a woman who's experiencing this and going through it, you're working so hard to recover. You're doing everything you're told to do. And it can feel very disheartening when there's no continuity of care. So no, I was really looked after, I have to say. And I knew that I could always contact them if I ever kind of felt that things were going a bit south again. But it was really good. But yeah, daily care from a community psychiatric nurse called Julia, who was really nice. It was really lovely.
You know, when you were admitted, and obviously, like you said, they're checking on you every day. Could you, and you had that tunnel vision of just you weren't yourself. Did you slowly start feeling like yourself and start to realize, oh my God, what's happened and what we're doing? And because you kind of out of person experience, you just become someone else.
You become someone else because you're having, well, you know, that you're having experiences which actually are something that you've not created. You know, they're happening to you, and you feel like nature is playing this really awful trick on you. I went on antipsychotics, which work really quickly, and they kind of cut the hallucinations out very, very quickly, and also like the really racing thoughts. You know, I was making lists constantly, like really manic lists of things. That really calmed down, and they helped me sleep as well. And then I had horrific anxiety about being near Joe, and so antidepressants for me kind of helped me get to a stable level where I wasn't shaking constantly, you know, so or like banging my feet or chattering my teeth. And so they kind of, you know, they kind of put me in kind of a steady state, just enough to kind of lift the fog, so I could then start creating strategies to kind of, you know, understand that it was okay to be with my baby, that he wasn't frightening, but also the fact that you're not going to know everything from day one. I think, you know, being a mum was like a learned experience. So actually being able to get calm and have a lot of my kind of symptoms alleviated by medication enabled me to focus on my recovery with Joe. But it's amazing when you do feel the fog start to lift. I remember when I shut the door after the first week, which is something I hadn't been able to do for, you know, that point nearly 7 weeks, being my baby of my own. I don't even know how long I was on my own with him, but it was like a massive experience for me, and like all the nurses clapped and stuff. My mum turned up that afternoon and they told my mum, and you know, everyone was saying how proud they were of me. And it seems so bizarre to say, but like to like celebrating being able to be on your own with your baby, the baby that you made and you grew and that you're feeding. Like, but to me it was like a massive turning point in my illness, and like a big point where I thought actually recovery is starting. But when you start seeing those glimmers, and I learned something, was that, you know, you'll have good days and then you'll have some bad days, but eventually those bad days will start to kind of go and be replaced more and more by good days. And then as you're almost fully better, you then realize if there is a bad day, it doesn't mean you're going back into psychosis or getting really ill again. It means you're tired, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, motherhood's hard. You start to kind of realize that there are new bad days, and they mean different things. They don't mean that you're going back into a psychotic state, because that's very frightening. You do feel any time on your road to recovery, if there's a dip, that you're going to go back to square one, but you don't, you know, like you're not even really going to step back, you're just kind of standing still on that day. But it's amazing when you do start to feel, it's amazing when you wake up and you don't feel anxious and you feel like you can get out of bed and that you're not frightened to get out of bed. Like waking up and not having that feeling is an amazing feeling, because I remember what it was like waking up and feeling scared of getting out of bed. It's not a nice feeling at all.
Does postpartum depression, because oh my God, my English is gone. Can postpartum depression lead on to this, or it's just two different?
They're two different illnesses. Yeah, they're two different illnesses. So, you know, postnatal depression, there's a huge amount of symptoms. It normally is, you know, if you're not feeling like yourself, so you can feel very sad, very weepy, very anxious, crying all the time, incredibly tired, like little things like think certain symptoms that people don't focus on, you know, so lack of interest in sex. If you're a really highly sex person before and during your pregnancy and you have the baby now, and alongside lots of other symptoms you're not interested in something like that, you know, you lose lack of interest in food, lack of interest in the baby, absolutely no motivation, constantly feeling kind of lethargic, you know, postnatal depression has those kind of symptoms. And say affects between like 1 in 4, 1 in 7 women. Postpartum psychosis is a separate illness. Sometimes people call it a more severe form of postnatal depression, but it isn't. It's a separate illness, you know, which is, and say no one knows what brings it on. And the symptoms of psychosis, which are mania, racing thoughts, talking very quickly, hallucinations, you know, rapid thoughts, the belief that your baby is God, like similar to the Stacey storyline. As you come out of it, I definitely felt like I had postnatal anxiety symptoms. You know, I was scared of being around Joe. I was frightened of my role as a mother. I felt very weepy. You know, I felt scared. But yeah, it's not normally deemed that one leads to the other. They're classed as separate illnesses. And I think that's quite often, well, when the women that I deal with, you know, there's definitely a lack of understanding of what postpartum psychosis is. It's classed as a medical emergency, you know, so they do say if you do see a woman who's given birth very recently, who is acting manic or speaking very quickly or writing lots of lists or kind of, you know, saying that she's seeing things or saying things that aren't making sense, you know, call 999, take her to casualty, ring the GP. It is classed as a medical emergency and she needs help immediately. Yeah.
Is there a link between that and schizophrenia?
Not that I know of. No, not that I know of. Not that I know of at all. No. No, that's not something that I've heard.
There's such a thin line, because when you've just had a baby, you could just be tired and making lists so you don't forget anything because of baby brain, and you're just anxious because you've never looked after a little person before. But then it's like, okay, but where are we drawing the line? Where is it an emergency and where is it that you're just overly tired? And
well, just look at how long it took your husband to keep taking you to actually get that diagnosis. And it was like he kept on pushing and pushing, like, look, she's doing this, she's doing that, and nothing was enough for them to kind of like red flag them. This is happening. So it's insane.
It's insane. And I say I think where the workers, where I hope our work, you know, over the last 11 years has got a bit better. And I say, you know, all over the UK now, there's charities being run by people like me who've experienced this. You know, we've got a specific charity now for postpartum psychosis. You know, we've got PND charities. And I think GPs have now got a thing called the Perinatal Mental Health Toolkit, which is on Google. I helped in the creation of it. So if a woman does go to see them and says, I've got these kind of symptoms, they can click on the toolkit, do a symptom check. They can click on the kind of medication that she can have. They can click on what support is available in their area. That's why when we say to women, if you don't feel yourself after having a baby, some people will say, oh, but I didn't feel depressed, so I didn't think it was postnatal depression. Yeah, but did you feel different to how you normally feel? You know, are you feeling really overwhelmed that you just feel like you can't see the end of the day? Is it feeling that it's just too much for you, that this isn't how you normally feel, that you normally find a way out and you can't see a way out of this? That's what we say now, go to your GP, because we hope there is so much work that's gone on over the last few years to encourage and support GPs to understand perinatal mental illness more and the different types of perinatal mental illness, so postnatal depression, anxiety, perinatal OCD, you know, postpartum psychosis, birth trauma, actually, that they've got tools to support them, diagnose and signpost women to help and support. We could always do more. There's always more to do. You know, we can always do better. There's always going to be one GP that might know more than another one. You know, so we say to women, if you go to a GP and you feel like you're walking, they're very anxious thing where you say yes to a GP, walk out the door and you think, oh God, I just don't feel I've got the response I want. You're entitled to book an appointment with another GP. You know, it's okay to say, I want to see someone else for another opinion. It's okay to say to the GP, to the receptionist, is there someone in a doctor's surgery who is good with women's health issues? Is there good in someone in the surgery who deals with postpartum issues? There's a charity called Smile Group that have got actually a checklist on their website that you can fill in with your symptoms. So if you're too scared to tell the doctor about some of your symptoms, particularly Jessica, like the kind of thoughts that we talked about, you can write them down and hand it to them so they can read it instead. You know, so we're trying to create a lot of tools that can support women when they talk to GPs. And indeed, there's a lot of support now from the Royal College of GPs in providing information to doctors, much more so than there was 11 years ago when I was unwell. with to support them in a diagnosis and getting help. These mental health problems are recoverable from, postnatal depression and psychosis. They're recoverable with the right help and support. And that's why it's really important that we say to someone, if you don't feel yourself, or you don't notice, and you notice a family member who's recently given birth doesn't see themselves, take them to the GP, get the health visitor out, because there are tools in place now that can help a diagnosis and support them.
Yeah, and just talk more about it, because that's what takes that taboo and stigma away from it. Because if you told your grandma, oh my God, I've got postnatal depression, she'd probably laugh at you and be like, go eat.
I know. So what about like when I was unwell? God, some of the things I was reading on the internet all those years ago, and I was trying to find someone who's gone through what I've gone through. There were things like saying, "Oh, postnatal depression didn't exist in my day. We were too busy to be depressed." Like my mum would talk about how someone down her road had 15 kids and 18 kids. And you read it like. But when you look into history as well, when you look into the reasons why a lot of women were committed to asylums in the Victorian times, postpartum psychosis was written down in some of those things, or insanity after birth, or hysteria after childbirth, hysteria 3 months after childbirth. Women experienced perinatal mental illness. They weren't respected in the way that we hope they are now, and they certainly weren't treated how they were now. They committed to asylums the rest of their life, but actually they've always experienced these kinds of illnesses. They just haven't been treated how they are now. But you'll always get these ridiculous views, like the Daily Mail kind of comment views of, this didn't exist years ago, we didn't have the time for this, people should just pull themselves together. I don't think we can ever truly appreciate the fact of what a woman goes through when she's pregnant, the huge impact it has on her body physically, and as those changes happen, as a baby grows to 9 months, the effect that has on you emotionally. Then you give birth, which is traumatic on your body, and then you're just made to go on your merry old way with your baby, feeding them and not getting any sleep. And then you think, God, how are we getting through this unscathed? How are women getting through this? And just because it's something that women have always done, just because nature gives us a body that is built to produce babies, it doesn't mean that it's all going to be rosy. We can see from history women have always gone through this, and women still are. And the best that we can do for them now is create more awareness, and indeed create more education around how we support these women and their families, and for it not to be shameful, and tell women they're not going to hurt their babies, they're not evil for having certain thoughts, and that it is okay in a safe space if you feel able to talk about this and to bring it up, because you're not the only person that's going through it. I guarantee you, women having intrusive thoughts of harm either to themselves or the baby will think they're the only people that they've had those thoughts, and believe me, they're not. They're really, really, really not. There's thousands of women experiencing this across the world. I'm like the UK ambassador for Postpartum Support International. And I do loads of work with women in America. And maternal OCD is talked about hugely in America. And actually, Alanis Morissette at the moment, she's on all of her concerts in America at the moment. She's got a big thing for Postpartum Support International, who is sponsoring the event. So there's a huge national light being shined on postpartum mood disorders across the pond with our friends there. So I think we just need to keep talking. I don't think I'll ever tire of this, because I just feel every day women are having babies and they're going through this, and I just feel we need to get the message out there that help is available. And if you don't get help when you first ask for it, keep going, because help is there and you deserve it. I don't like that phrase, it's okay not to be okay. It's not okay not to be okay because you feel like shit. What is okay is to say, I don't feel right, I need someone to give me some help, and I deserve to get help. And I think that's the thing we need to keep pushing, that you do deserve to get help and that you will get better.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. And I love the passion that you put into this. And I know you said before, I thought after 11 years, I thought I'd shut up about this, but really, I don't ever want you to shut up. Because of people like you is why some of us feel good about ourselves. Like, some of the things you have said has really stuck to me, because I've at one point, felt very down and felt like the worst person ever. But now going back and kind of tracking your thoughts, you kind of think about it now and you're like, okay, no, it's okay, we all go through it. And you've explained the process of how our body changes, all the hormones that are running through our body, then we go through birth and then we're just expected to act normal. And that's not the case. We're human beings, everyone's going to be different. But thank you so much, Eve. It's been I think this is like my favorite episode.
Oh, I've loved it. You're such great girls, and I've listened to some of the podcasts. They're really good, really, really good. So they're really enjoyable. You've covered some really good stuff.
Also, sorry for everyone listening, we spoke to someone that had MRKH, which had no vagina and a womb. She had a womb, right? And now we just spoke to someone that has 2 wombs and 2 vaginas. So there you go, guys. There's a lot to be learned out there.
There you go. There's so much to be learned, and I just think we need to talk about these things more, because so we realise that as women we are going through some very unique things, through childbirth, through getting older, through hitting 40, through hitting the menopause.
Oh, we need to have that chat, because it happens to very young people as well. Like I think Zoe Hardman, she went through, I think at 33 or 35, I think.
I read that.
And you know, you just think, oh no, it'll happen when I'm 50, and it's like, no, that's not the reality, you know.
And it can make you feel like your brain has been extracted from your body.
Oh, thank you so much, Eve.
We usually like to end the episode with a golden tip, and I know you've basically given us 1,000 golden tips throughout with all your beautiful words. But is there anything else you'd like to add?
Do you know what? I would just say, honestly, I could talk everything about, you know, going to get help, this and other. The most important thing to remember is, one, you really aren't alone. You're not the only one who's had these. However bad you think your symptom is, your thoughts are, you're not the first person who's had them. I can guarantee you. And number 2, please know you will get better. So, like, if someone says you go to a doctor or they ignore you, go to another doctor. You know, take all the options that are provided to you. There's nothing wrong with meds. There's nothing wrong with therapy. Anything that can help you go in the right way towards recovery, take it, try it. And just really know that you are going to get better. I really promise you. You'll see, you'll honestly feel like you won't. You'll feel like you're at the bottom of a pit you will never, ever, ever be able to get out of. But I promise you, you really, really will.
Mama's Code out. Mwah.
Mama's Code.